Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm John Bitson, the Menard Family Director of the Sheila and Robert Challey Institute for Global Innovation and Growth. Welcome to the Menard Family Distinguished Speaker Series. I'm super excited that Magatte Wade is joining us today. Magatte's passion for lifting people out of poverty through economic freedom and entrepreneurship is contagious. I think everyone in here is going to be inspired after hearing her. Much more inspired than hearing me talk. So I'm really excited about Magatte being here today. Magatte actually went through some extra travel. She was supposed to be here at 4 o'clock in the afternoon yesterday, but she was going through Minneapolis, and unfortunately the airport was closed, and so we weren't able to give her any new snow here today, but she saw plenty of snow yesterday. So she actually slept in Minneapolis last night and got here today. So thanks for going through the extra effort, Magatte. So Magatte Wade is a serial entrepreneur, inspirational speaker, and visionary business leader with a passion for creating positive change in Africa. She is founder and CEO of SkinIsSkin.com, the lip balm with a mission. And hopefully you got a lip balm on your way in. If you didn't get one, there's a free lip balm for you. And she's dedicated to reducing discrimination while creating jobs and prosperity in her home country of Senegal. Throughout her career, she has created successful high-end retail brands inspired by diverse African traditions. She is passionate about the role of free markets in overcoming poverty and the role of enterprise to tackle social issues and entrepreneurial education. She has been named a Forbes 20 Youngest Power Woman in Africa, a Young Global Leader by the World Economic Forum at Davos, a TED Global Africa Fellow, and a Leading Woman in Wellness by the Global Wellness Summit. So again, thanks for being here, Magatte, and for going through the extra travel to get here. I'm very grateful to the Menard family and to all of our donors who make this possible. So without any further delay, let's give a warm welcome to Magatte Wade.
Thank you so much, and thanks to the Menard family as well, and to all of you for coming here tonight. If it was me, I would not be in this room right now with the cold out there. So, but maybe you guys are used to it, but I'm not. Can you hear me? Okay, I have the feeling. Yeah, it works. Okay. So, and I also want to apologize. I forgot my shoes. These are not the most presentable shoes to be around with, but I apologize. So I just forgot my shoes. So I think it's going to be very simple. What's going to happen tonight, I'm just going to share with you my story, and then from there we can have maybe some questions. So when people are like, Magatte, what's your story? I tell them, the way I like to tell my story is from the way my mind has shifted. And the way my mind has shifted has followed what was happening in my life. So let's go right into it. So I was born in Senegal, on the west coast of Africa. I don't know how many of you have gone to Senegal before. Anybody from Africa here? Are you? What? Your family maybe?
My family.
Yeah. Somalia, Eritrea?
Somalia.
There you go. We can always recognize fellow Africans when we see them. And I can always tell you where they're from, almost. You?
Can you recognize where I'm from?
Oh. Are you from maybe, I would say somewhere in Northern Africa?
Yes.
Yeah? Morocco or Algeria or Tunisia? One of those.
Egypt.
Egypt. Oh. Anyway, so you guys I don't recognize you. Just kidding. Just kidding. We have a joke, North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I was born in Senegal, west coast of Africa. And as soon as I was done breastfeeding, right around age 2, my family, my mom and dad made the decision that many African families like them make, which is they made the decision to emigrate. They made the decision to leave, and they left me behind. The reason why they did that is because they were going on search for a better life. By the way, English is only my 4th language, so bear with me. Sometimes the words don't come out in the right order or don't come out sounding the right way. That's all it is. And I give you permission to correct me. That's how I make it better. So my parents made this decision to go, like so many other African parents have done before them, and so many more have done since them. They decided to leave because they felt that they needed to do that in order to provide for the family back home. And so they left, and they left me with my grandma. Don't feel sorry for me. I had the best life, being with my grandma. I credit her for a lot of the things, for a lot of what I am today. And so when my parents left, my grandma, I stayed with her and just had an amazing time. But I was not going to school because I did not want to go to school. Grandma said, it's okay, you don't go to school. So I was a true free range child. And at some point, a tragedy happened in Senegal. There was a big accident. One of the power poles fell, and a few of my friends died in the process. And that's when my parents were like, well, I guess it's time. And also their immigration journey looked like it worked. Now they were going to be able to stay in Europe, and so maybe now was the time to bring me over because the situation was stable for them. And so I remember before leaving, my grandma was just, she was very, very intense, my grandma was. And she said, you know, you're about to go to this place where so many people will not look like you, and that's okay. And she said, you're going to be to this place where so many people speak, almost no one is going to speak your language, and that's okay. And you're going to go to a place where children go to school, and you haven't, and that's okay. And she said the reason why it's okay is because even if they don't look the same as you, they're still people. And the difference of, skin color is just that, the color of the skin. And it's human skin, you're human, they're human, no big deal. And then she said, even though the language we're going to speak is not going to be the same as yours, it is still a language that humans speak. And you're human, so chances are you'll be just fine learning their language. And same thing with school. She said, going to school is what little humans do. And you're a little human, so that's what you'll be able to do. And she said, no matter what you see out there, it's okay to be impressed by some of it, but never be intimidated by it. My grandma was very intentional with her words, very, all the time. And that's really how she sent me off. And I landed in Germany, and as a little girl, I was around 7, something like that, and the first question that popped into my head was, how come they have this and we don't? And I think what little girl Magatte was just thinking was, wait a second, how come over there, when it's time to take a shower back home, it's a whole affair. Grandma has to get the charcoal stove going. This is not like you walk into your kitchen and you turn the stove on and the burner comes up. No. It's like imagine when you're camping, that little stove you have and you stick the coal in it. And Grandma didn't have this Cheetah chimney to use so things go faster. No, she puts it in, gets some newspaper or some little wood, and she puts it in, with the matches, take it on, and then fan. Even me, sometimes I would have to fan this thing, and so it can go faster. But she puts a pot of water on it so it boils. Then she puts it in a bigger bucket, adds cold water, and finally there, one of my uncles, somebody stronger, just takes it to the shower area, and there, at last, with a smaller pot, I can now start to take my shower. Compare that with now I'm in Germany. Mom says, Magatte, it's time to get in the shower. I'm like, I am not getting butt naked in this cold weather. Where's the bucket of water? And my mom was like, come on, you silly, just jump in the shower. And there I go in, turn the buttons up, water's coming down, nice temperature, anything you need. It's like, whoa. That was my first experience. And then same thing, paved roads everywhere. I didn't have to get my feet, dusty or anything like that, like back home. As soon as I get home, I have to wash my feet. So life just felt so simple. Life just felt so easy in Germany compared to where I came from. And I was just like, how come they have that and we don't? And that question became the defining question of my life. You know how sometimes kids can be very obsessed by something? I was that child, just obsessed. How come? And I wanted to have my answer. So my whole life, the rest of my life was devoted to finding my answer. And in a way, that's what brought me here, getting to speak to you today. And eventually, as I was growing up, the question became a little bit more sophisticated. It became, how come some countries like mine are poor, while others are rich? And so Magatte goes through her life. She's doing quite well in Germany, but after a couple of years there, family decides we gotta move. If we're gonna stay in Europe, we gotta move the family to France because of France's historical relationships with my country. We used to be one of the colonies of France. So for many different reasons, my parents decided it would be a better place to be if we're gonna stay in Europe. So there we pack up and we go. For another pack up in my life and going. And so at that point, so my parents, we go to, France. I'm continuing with my life. There, I'm in business school. After business school in France, I decided that France was going to be too small for my ambitions. So I packed up and I left. I picked the one country in the world where I was told you can become anything you want. There's this American dream thing. So I packed up, came to the US, and after I first went to my, when I was in business school, the last semester, we could do an exchange program with the US, and it was with IUPUC, so Indiana University, Purdue University, at Columbus. Yeah, so I started in America in Columbus, Indiana. Some of my friends were making fun of me saying, oh, you're going to a place where we have more cows and churches than people, and I said, yeah, I'm going to America. Anyway, so I went, and I really had a great time once again. It is there in Columbus, Indiana, that I found this really great family business with the amazing people who ran it, who own it, the Wentzes, Carol and Elwood Wentz. I say their name every time I get a chance, because they're really the ones who got me my start in this country and in a way got me set up for the rest of it. They paid for my H-1B visa. It was costing thousands of dollars. They helped me with my first apartment. I mean, everything. These people put themselves and their families on the line for me, and I will never thank them enough for that. So whenever people make fun of folks in the Midwest, I do have a problem with that. And so I'm here to defend the people in the Midwest of America. So anyway, so that's kind of what happened. And at some point, after 9 months in that business, Carol, it was clear, she said, I had done for their business what they did not expect me to do in less than 2 years, but in 9 months I was done. I had put back in order all of the years and years and years of accounting, all the way to the .01 decimal. It was all done, worked on some marketing programs for them, everything was in place. And they did not expect it to go that fast, but eventually I think they could see the potential that I did not see myself. And Carol said, I believe you've got a big future, and there's just no way that we're too small for that future. What we have to offer is too small. Now, we could be selfish because we love you and keep you here, but it would be the wrong thing to do. So you need to grow your wings and know that if ever you have you fall, we will be right there to pick you up. So why don't you go and fly? And around that time is when I guess something I didn't know. There is this gentleman that I grew up, that we went to business school with. He was 7 years older than me, but we met at during my first year of business school, and he had migrated to the US, a Frenchman, and eventually, as another man had proposed to marry me, and I said yes, and Carol and Ellen hated this man because they knew he was the wrong guy for me, but they knew not to tell me no, because if you tell me no, I go do it. So they said, well, there's this other gentleman over there that you seem to love so much. You guys have a lot, seem to have a lot going on. So how about you just go figure it out? And I went to visit that person in San Francisco, and like they said, I left my heart in San Francisco. So came back, packed up, went back to San Francisco. And it is there. When I arrived in San Francisco, what I did was kind of crazy, because when you have an H-1B visa, normally it's attached to the job you have, that you applied with. And so when I made that decision, I put myself in jeopardy, legally speaking. Not that I stayed here illegally, I did not do that, but what it meant is I had to find another company sponsor, ASAP. Otherwise, I would have to get on the first flight back to wherever, otherwise I become illegal in this country and I would be barred from coming back for the next 10 years, and usually when they do that, you'll never come back. So I had to find another job, and everybody was like, are you crazy, why are you doing this? But guess what, within a week, I found not one, but 3 companies who were willing to sponsor me, and I had my H-1B again. But it is there in Silicon Valley, I discovered this magic of entrepreneurship. And I was doing extremely well for myself. So much that before I was 25, I was able to buy a house in one of the most, I think back then it was the most expensive zip code in the country. And the reason I say that is because it matters for what I'm going to tell you next. So here I was, having done so well for myself. If you had thought of that little girl who used to be walking around bare feet, not necessarily because my parents couldn't afford it, but I didn't like shoes because shoes were an infringement on my freedom, I felt. So I felt like I was fast faster, I was better with bare feet, I could grab things better. But if you can imagine this little girl in her little village, somewhere in Senegal, Africa, all of a sudden transported to Silicon Valley, and here she is, working for companies like Google and Netflix. How many times did I get lost going to the Netflix office in South San Jose? No one knew this company would become a household name. Same thing with Google. I started working with them when it was one building in the South Bay, in the Bay Area. So, in the peninsula. And so anyway, so now so oftentimes I would think about that. I would be like, wow, how far have you come? But there is this one day where, as I was going through that, I was in my car driving down Big Sur, driving down Highway 1 going to Big Sur, one of the most beautiful places in the world. If you don't know it, you might want to go and check it out. But just as would happen so often, when I started to count my blessings, and when I started to feel proud of myself, when I started to be so happy with what it is that I had accomplished. But that one day, something special happened, something that would change the course of my life eventually. And there I was, feeling so happy, blasting this music from Youssou N'Dour, one of my favorite musicians from Senegal, and just feeling so good, feeling so proud, feeling so grateful, remembering all the people who have made the journey possible, from my grandma to all the people who have, showed up on the journey to help me get to where I was. And, feeling so proud of all the achievements I've made. I was this headhunter in finance, super well respected, doing extremely well, and all of a sudden, things went completely dark in my mind. Dark. A switch turned on. Or off, I don't know. And what happened is what would happen to me all the time, every time I felt good about myself. I would feel, at some point it flipped, and it flipped because I would think about the people back home. This time though, what happened is, I was no longer able to reconcile the life of abundance that I was afforded with a life of scarcity that I had left behind. For the longest time until that day, the way I dealt with it was to push it under the rug. Just shrug it off as much as I could. Because what do you want me to do about this? Well, what do you want me to do about the fact that so many people, I grew up with stories almost every month, if it's not every couple weeks, stories of people. Some I knew because they were friends of friends, or they were big brothers or big sisters of friends, who, we're talking young people here, we're talking people who are maybe 18, 17, sometimes younger, putting themselves into little fishermen's boats and trying to cross over to Europe to get a job. Oftentimes the boat doesn't make it, tips over, and then at the bottom of the ocean, all of these people laying at the bottom of the ocean serving as fish food. Sometimes you would hear stories of somewhere above England, a body falls off because somebody thought it would be a good idea to hide on the landing gear of a plane in their attempt to emigrate to Europe. Sometimes they would open the cargo section of a plane and find a frozen dead body because no one told them that way up there it gets so cold to die. And then when people say the sea route is too dangerous, the land route is too dangerous, the sea route over air, then they try to go land route. But what happens to them oftentimes when they go land route is that they get stuck in Libya. And when they get stuck in Libya, do you know what happens to them? They get sold as slaves. It took for the CNN a couple years ago to do a piece on it for the world to finally believe what people like me and others have been saying, because we all know people who are part of WhatsApp groups, oftentimes sending emails for us to buy somebody's freedom back so they can go back home. On the slave market of today, yes, ladies and gentlemen, we have slave markets to this day. On a market like that, I am worth exactly between $300 and $500. That's what I'm sold for. So, that day, it just didn't work. My coping mechanism has failed, finally failed. And my body jerked so badly. And I think, what they say is the brain has this infinite ability to make sense of pretty much anything, including the most horrible thing. And that's how you see people justifying having stayed silent or having participated in genocides, horrible stuff. The brain has an infinite ability to justify pretty much anything, but the body does not. And I think that day, my body was just like, no, we're no longer following your body, your mind is crazy, it's taking you crazy places, no, this is not working, no. And my body jerked so much that the steering wheel, it's a miracle, I tell people, that I'm still here even talking to you today, because normally I should right now be down below on the ocean, probably dead. But it didn't happen that way. And as soon as I got a chance, I stopped the car, and that was it for me. That was it. I knew then that I could never, but somehow my fate was sealed. And I promised, I said, God, from here on, I want that every breath that I take, I want it to serve my continent, I want it to serve my people. Now, I don't know what to do, that's why I've avoided being involved for so long, but you show me the way, and I promise you, I will do the work. And that was it, and it worked. A few months later, I was going back home to Senegal to take my husband, who is French, to Senegal, to see where I came from, and discover these, drinks, all the things I talked to him about my youth and everything. And there I discovered that, my favorite juice, which is called this bissap, it's a hibiscus drink. It's really even part of our cultural identity. When you go to Senegal, known as the country of Teranga, Teranga means hospitality. That is what us, the people of Senegal, are known for from around the world. And we have this juice that personifies it. But you know what? Because Coca-Cola, Fanta, Pepsi made it that if you're anybody or somebody, but you drink Pepsi, Coca-Cola, Fanta. So this traditional juice, indigenous juice, squeezed out. Because the people at the top buy the Western soda pops brands, and the people at the bottom of the pyramid, they want the knockoff brands of the Western brands. In between, our indigenous drinks are squeezed out. And with it, the livelihood of the women who used to grow the key ingredient for this, the hibiscus. Just like that. So women would leave the countryside, move to the city, try to find jobs. So many end up maybe in prostitution or begging on the streets or whatever. The kids in a horrible circle, vicious circle of poverty. And for me, it was not okay. So, but with this, my parents always raised us with this concept of criticize by creating. Don't come to me with your problems only. Come to me with your problems and the solutions that you offer. The only valid form of criticism is through offering an alternative. If you can't do that, go sit down. Think about it some more and come back. And the reason why we did that, I think, is simply because when you're in a solutions mode, you're just in a take action mode. You're like in a state of agency. You're taking your own agency. You're no longer a victim of anybody or anything. Regardless of how maybe big those threats are, it doesn't matter. You're thinking about how you're going to have it your way. And that's why I started a company. At some point I said, you know what? If I'm not happy with the status quo, I change it. So I'm going to build a brand, and we're going to do reverse colonialism on my own people. If my people don't believe that what they have is good enough, they think the West always has it better, then I'm going to do reverse colonialism on them. I'm going to build this brand. It's going to be this juice that we're going to sell to one of the markets in the world that everybody looks up to, which was, in this case, the US market. And within the US market, not just any market, the cultural creative demographic. Back in those days, these are the people who were shopping at Whole Foods. They were the first early adopters of stores like Whole Foods Market. I'm sure you know of Whole Foods Market. So these are people who would tell you that the key decision component for whether we're going to buy a good or service is going to have to do with ethics. How ethical or how ethically made is this product for people, for the planet, for the employees, anybody involved in it. And I went after that market. That's my expertise. So everything I do in an uber sustainable manner. That's just my training. That's what I believe in. So in any case, That's what we did. I wanted to bring my juice back. I wanted to put these women back to work, and that's what we did. So by the time the UNDP, which is one organization of the UN, by the time they did a case study on us, we had put back to work 4,000 women. I had raised millions of dollars to build this company, and eventually it would go to 9,000 women. And at some point I look around from this company I started in my kitchen, all of a sudden I look around my board room, and I have Roger Enrico, the founder, one of the chairman of PepsiCo. I had the person who was the CEO of Odwalla. I recruited him out of retirement to come work with me. We also had the CEO of Sobe, that was sold to PepsiCo. So we had all of these people, anybody who was the who's who of a business, of a beverage industry, pretty much was involved with us. And that again was Vito Magatte, came from Africa, and this is what was possible for her. So at that point, but then, remember how I was telling you about my question? How come some countries rich, how some countries poor? I'm living my life, I'm asking questions, I'm reading news, I'm reading books, I'm reading pieces of all kinds, and I'm listening to people. And what I'm hearing from some people with a very straight face, oh darling, it's not your fault. It's just because, the IQ theory, according to which there's no way blacks and browns have the same IQ level as white people. Just this morning, I had to tweet back at somebody because we're saying, of course, poor countries are poor. They're poor because they have low IQ, they're lazy, and they don't work hard. But stuff is out there. I've gone to conferences where we have panels of people talking, and this is very serious conferences, where people are talking about this stuff, saying, oh, these Indian people, they could never amount to much because, they have a culture, it's in their blood. They're just corrupt. And they say the same thing about us Africans as well. So I've heard that. Some people say that's the reason why we're poor. Some other people say, oh, it's just because you don't have access to enough education. And by the way, this person I reposted, if you want, you can go to my Magatte W.Gmail, because that's the one I posted this morning on Twitter. Magatte W is my Twitter. Same thing, this guy also, oh yeah, one of the other things that low IQ and low education. I say, you go say that every year we have 10 plus millions young Africans who come out of 100-something, 60 of universities we have all over the continent. And out of them, systematically, a good half would not find a job. Right now, I have a couple employees that are also remote for something else I'm doing. And they're based in Swaziland, and guess what? So this one lady, I'm interviewing her, and they're all math, BS in math. Bachelors in math. And I would like to think that you guys have a respect for BS in math. It's not an easy thing, right? And some of them even beyond that. They're like, now they're looking at the masters in math. This is like serious people in math. The first one I found, and then it turns out there's so many of them. The first one I found, I interviewed her, and I was like, what are you doing now? And she said, oh, I'm raising chickens. So if that man wants to go tell this woman that she just needs one more degree to get a job, I would love to see him telling her that. So education, and then other people, oh, you're malnourished. Others, oh, if only shoes, Tom's shoes, so on and so forth. I would hear all of this, but then none of this stuff made sense to me. None of it made sense, and do you know why? Because if any of this made sense, how come my parents or any other of these people who come from these poor nations, any of them, the minute they leave and they go to a place, a nation that's wealthy, all of a sudden they can manifest their greatest potential. This is the same person, same background, even name. We're talking about the same person. So because I have a pretty Cartesian mind, I'm thinking, okay, what because everything pretty much remained the same, all the way to the clothes they wear. So what changed? Ooh, the place they happen to be in. The country they happen to be in. In a way, that's why the question became, then why are some countries poor while others are rich? And all of this was just starting to form in my mind. And as I started my first company, so now I'm thinking, there's something going on. There's something going on. And then some people were like, oh, but of course, this is a rich country, so of course people are going to succeed. I'm like, I don't how to explain that, but it doesn't make sense. Even that doesn't make sense. It doesn't. So I kept on going with my own life. And when I started that first company, then I built that second company, and now I'm building my third company. What they all have in common is I usually have two companies. One sister company in Africa, dealing with supply chain management as well as manufacturing and everything. And then I have a sister company in the US dealing with research and development, sales and promotions and marketing and all of that stuff. And the first time I built my company, now I'm starting to see things. Okay, let me walk you through this. That one was back in 2003, the first one. Here, it's Senegal in Africa. It is taking me, let me start with the US side, maybe it's better. I start with the US side. Takes a few minutes to register your business. Now we can do it online, 20 minutes, faster if you don't have to watch your fingers like I do. 20 minutes, you registered, done. And it costs you a couple $100 maybe. So that's in the US. Here in Senegal, sister company, remember. This one is done over there. 20 minutes or something, couple $100. This one here, when we did that, by the time the business became legit, do you know how long it took? 2 years. And it cost me easily $5,000. I go over here, like it's happening right now. I am hiring a couple more employees. John is somebody I want to hire. We meet. We talk. John, I really don't need that PhD in math, that PhD in German that you were, I don't know what you were thinking, but I don't need it. But I think you're going to be a good lab technician because you've got some other skill sets. And you want to do that? Oh my God, that's my dream. That's why I'm so good at it, because that's my dream. I'm doing it, yeah. Oh, and this salary works? Awesome. We sign. This is the US. We sign. Done. Over here. What's your name, ma'am? Cheryl. Cheryl and I hire her almost for the same job as I hired John. But because we're in Senegal, so Sharon and I, before we signed the contract, Sharon, same thing, has this worthless PhD in German, in our situation, but I don't need. But, Sharon, okay. Because we're in Senegal, I have to go look at the paperwork. Because the government, for every single job, there is a group you belong to, which goes with your salary, everything. It's all centrally planned, all the way down. So Cheryl, okay, because you have a PhD in German, because you have been working for how long? Oh, the government says, I need to pay you X. Except in this case, it's 3 times more than what I'm paying John. In the US! Okay. That doesn't work. Sharon, go home. Good luck with that degree. Remember this half of those tens of millions of young people sitting home waiting for a job that I told you about? Many of them, went to study Dutch, literally. In Senegal, so many kids who learn Dutch. Don't ask me why, but whatever. So they're sitting home, because the minute they show up and they have a GED or they have something else beyond that, then all of a sudden their salary pretensions go up by government ruling. So I say, Cheryl, go home. I can't hire you. This is how Cheryl is sitting home with her PhD, but then you're going to tell her she needs more education. But anyway. So, okay, but let's say I still do it. Okay, Cheryl, fine, I'm going to do it. Okay, so she comes, I come. We sign the paperwork. We each sign it 3 times. Because then guess what? Magatte now has to go to this government office that's called Inspection du Travail, which means it's labor inspection office of the government. There, I show up with my paperwork. And by the way, remember I told you I'm hiring 2 people right now. So I took 2 people, files under me. And because I decided deliberately to be in the countryside so that we can provide jobs, and in our case, we also have created a Montessori type school for the children of our workers. These are all very modest background people. But it is important for me to try to revive these communities, to keep them going. And we all know that a job plus good schools are usually an anchor for a community. That's how you help a community thrive. So we made this deliberate effort to be in the countryside. But then what does it mean? But every time we have to deal with a government office, get on the road. On bad roads, back roads, dangerous roads, try to make it to the first government office. In this case, Senegal is divided into regions, and it turned out that some of these offices, they're actually in the capital of a region, Thiès, which is an hour and a half, almost 2 hours away from where we are. So this whole thing takes me a day, usually. Because when you show up at the office, guess what? Oh, the inspector is not here right now, although it's 10 o'clock and he was supposed to be there from 8 on. Oh, yeah, he went to run an errand. Yeah, so you sit and you wait. You wait, you wait, you wait, you don't know how long it's gonna be. Finally he shows up and he's like, okay, and by the way, I'm finally having to, this is my second time, because we went once to take it down, and after 2 weeks, nothing. So now we're sending a coursier to go back and forth, still nothing. And at some point you're like, okay, let the boss go, maybe it's gonna work, I don't know. So now I'm going, and this inspector, whatever, and then he shows up and he's like, well, where is Cheryl's medical report? What? Yeah, because we, the government, not only decide how much Cheryl is going to make, but we decide if Cheryl is physically fit to work for you, doing the job she said as a grown person she's going to do. We have students in this room. Does any of your parents get to tell you where and who you can work with? Do you think it should be okay for the government to tell you that? So this guy he hasn't seen my place, doesn't even know what we do, doesn't know what's involved, nothing. But he said, well, she has to, you need that. I'm like, where is it said? Well, there's a special decree, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, can you show me that? Wherever, because when I'm calling my CPA, who, by the way, we had to hire for this, because the laws are so complicated, you don't know what the hell you're doing, and you're gonna make mistakes, and if you make mistakes, you all know how it goes with the state. You get harassed or put in jail, maybe. So you don't want that. So my CPA is like, what? I've never heard that. And so he's like, give me the phone. And so the CPA is like, I never heard that. I deal with Dakar most of the time, capital city, and I never hear that. And he's like, well, it's because they're busy. But here we have time, and we'll make you feel it. That's how we are treated as employers, people who create jobs. So he said, yeah, and then eventually, when we looked at where that law was, these are things that date from before the independence of Senegal. We're talking about colonial rules here, even. It's even worse. Like, whoa. So I have to go back. And I ask you to go get one. You go to a doctor, he doesn't even look at you. He's writing the stuff, it's all shakedown. See, rent seeking right there. So you get it, you give it to me, we go back. Right now, they approved one of the contracts, but the other contract is not approved. And do you know why the other contract is not approved? Because remember how I told you how a lot of these rules and regulations and conventions, all of these things, they date to so long back. There is one job that they don't have in their roster of jobs. And I said, well, what do we do? And I'm not surprised. I mean, something that was from before 1960, there are jobs today that exist that didn't exist back then, and there are jobs that have disappeared but existed back then. And I said, what do we do in a situation like that? Oh, well, in a situation like that, I, the inspector, get to decide. And guess what? Because they're so pro-employee and they think us employers are bad people, so this guy is so proud of himself, he's like, I decided that this gentleman should be at category number 3, which is going to make his salary 3 times more than what I and him have decided. And I said, sorry, I can't do it. You deal in theory life, but in reality, my pocket is not this extendable just because you say so. I have a business to run, and every time I add 50 cents to the cost of my goods, I have to retail it to the customer $2 more. How do you expect me to be competitive when the American women that I'm competing with on the same market, at same value, because her country didn't have a nonsense of this, she gets to sell it hers $2 less than mine, and me I have to sell $2 more just because of your idiocy. No customer is gonna go for this. The market is not that stupid. So I can't do it, sorry. And you know what that means? It means that for this man, who, because I have been hiring him, I have been paying him, he has been working with us, And I know this is recorded. I don't care because it's all out there. And it's still going. We're gonna fight and see what happens. But in the meantime, I keep paying him. But normally I'm not supposed to pay him. We're supposed to wait for the contract to be approved by the inspection labor guy before he can start. And if I wanted to go by the law, do you know what that means? This man has to go sit home and forego the income he's getting from this job. And so, but if I don't want to let him go, my next best option is I hire him as a consultant. What does it mean? It means he won't have the benefits and advantages that come with being an employee, but my other employees get. Because for my other employees, I'm paying, and I'm proud to say I'm happy to pay for this, Social Security, I'm paying for pension plan, and also we pay their taxes due to the IRS. That's part of how it works. But this man, when his wife is going to have a child or he's ready to go to the hospital or whatever, he is not going to be able to go at more interesting rates. That's what all of these people, especially the ILO, International Labor Organization folks, because we care so much about employees, because you employers, business people are so bad, we're going to put so many guardrails around you, and tighten your necks all over the place. That's the only way. Yeah. Guess what? Did you know that Senegalese employees are among the best protected employees in the world on paper? But do you know what it relates to in real life? What it cost? My country is famously one of the 20 poorest countries in the world. Super high levels of employment. And you can understand why. At the end of the day, that's what I said to the head of the ILO at some point when I talked at the UN. I told him, if I can't fire you, I cannot hire you. It is that simple. If you're about to get married to your sweetheart, and I tell you, be very careful, this is it. No matter what happens, no matter if he beats you down the road, no matter if he abuses the children, no matter what he does, you cannot divorce him. Will you, with all the love that you have for him and all the hopes that you have in him, would you marry that man? She's not saying yes, well, I know that she's saying no. And I have yet to hear somebody tell me yes in those conditions. Well, that's what it is. Because in my country, you are married to employees, or pretty much literally. And if I wanted to get rid of any of them, this is happening right now. Somebody was not doing her job. And we asked many times, sat down with her many times, and eventually we have to separate. Sometimes it happens. You know what she did? She went to the inspection labor office and said, well, Magatte had no right to fire me. So now the state is going to get to decide how it went. And guess what? I know that I'm going to have to pay something because that's how the laws are designed. And all the judges supposedly are pro-employees. If I even wanted to close my company tomorrow, because maybe sales are not going so well or whatever, any or all my employees could go to the state and say, well, we think she wrongly closed her company. She should say why she closed it. We think she was able to still do it. Are you freaking kidding me? But this is pretty much what I have to deal with all the freaking time. Excuse my bad words. Now you can tell that I'm being pissed, because I've been dealing with this for the past year. And it's costing me a lot of money with a lawyer, going back and forth. So, ladies and gentlemen, I ask you, if you have all of these type of problems, one more, and then I'm going to promise I'm going to wrap this up. To get my electricity, because we had to set up, because unlike in the US, it's not like you can just come and rent a place to manufacture that's up to standard or whatever. So, you always have to do some work. So in our case, we had to build our own lab from the ground up, everything. And we had applied for the electricity very early because I knew it takes a long time. And by month number 8, we're normally are about to try to open this thing because the trainer that's supposed to come, our chemist is French chemist, she's going to travel, bless you, internationally, come on. We had to plan everything, and the only thing that was not ready was the electricity. So we've applied for more than a year by then. And when you apply, you go, you pay, you do all your things. On paper, it's going to take 2 weeks, no more. Except that 1 month, 2 months, nothing. You give them your money, everything is there. And eventually, at some point I'm like, this is ridiculous, I gotta go. So I go, and I see this pile of paperwork on the table. And the guy tells me, the manager tells me, he's like, the manager of the agency tells me, he said, you see that pile of it? I said, yeah. These are applications, and it's one application per sheet. So it's not even like a sheet, 10 pieces of paper is one application. So I'm starting to count in my head, I'm like, there are hundreds in here. And he said, and for each one of those applications, for us to get them the electricity, it needs a meter. Look over there the number of meters we have. 3 meters over there. I'm starting to think I'm in trouble now. So I do what I do best. I talk my way to one of them, because I don't pay bribes. That's one thing I do not do. When you want to have the big mouth that I have, you simply cannot be paying bribes. So I don't believe in them, but most importantly, no one ever do I want someone to show up and say, Magatte Wade paid us bribes. So I've got to do it whichever way I can without doing that. So I tell this man, tell the story, my sub story, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And eventually he's like, he's starting to get that if he doesn't give me 1 meter, I'm probably going to talk his brain out. So he's like, okay, fine, just have it. But then he said, but you're going to have your own electrician come. Oh, and he has to be certified by us. Turns out there's a whole side market to electricians. So that have a stamp of this agency to do work on the side. So I paid already normally for all of this to be done. And we're way past the time their contract said it should be done. But who am I going to fight? The state? Because this is a state. Okay, so I'm like, I got no choice. And I'm like, well, do you have people to advise, to recommend? No, of course we do. And so we recommended somebody. This person shows up. And I'm like, where's your truck? Where's your material? Where's your... Nothing. The guy has nothing. Shows up, bare naked hands, with maybe a couple tools, whatever. And then he's like, well, you know, we are going to need such cable, length of cable, that we need to put it on a roll, and the roll is so big it needs to be on a pickup truck, but I don't have a pickup truck. Okay, I don't have a pickup truck either. So I call mayor. He's my saving grace, this mayor, the mayor of the town. He's the one who got me there. He's the one who emailed me all the way from Senegal to say, can you come over here? So I said, Mayor, this is a problem. And he said, you can use the one from the city hall. Great. Then the guy's like, well, we need a ladder. You know those super, super long ladders? We need one. I don't have it. Mayor, okay. So I got the ladder. Finally, that's how we got electricity. And then I'm like, time to give this back. I look around. The truck is gone. The ladder is gone. Oh, the guy used it to go and knock down a few more jobs. I'm like, I mean, really? Seriously? So, you know, that's what I do. Sometimes, you know, I cry and then I laugh. No, seriously, when I was at the guy's office, that's pretty much what I did. I was crying at some point. And if Mayor did not stop me, I would have strangled the guy also. So guys, I ask you, if it is so hard to not only start your business, but then to run it, I didn't tell you, every month I have to go to 3 different government offices to pay for my employees as part of a payroll. I go to the Social Security I told you, pension plan, as well as to the IRS equivalent. And you have to go in person, or somebody in person, pay in person because they're not using the technology that the rest of us use. Every single month, I have to do that. One day, easily wasted. So I ask you, if it is so hard to start your business and then to run it, who here would say, oh, I'm gonna go start a business in Senegal? Raise your hand. No one. And this, my friends, is the reason why we're poor. Because if you're poor because you have no money. No money, at least not enough money to take care of your basic needs. You don't have money because no source of income. What is the source of income for most of us? A job, isn't it? Where do jobs come from? Okay, some of my Berkeley students, they like to say, oh, but the government also gives jobs. I'm like, even if you work for the government, where do you think the money the government pays you? Because I would like to think you're being paid, right? You're not doing this for free. And then they're like, yeah, you're right. We go back to the private sector. Because that money comes from the taxes that, employers and employees pay. Even if you work for a nonprofit, do you think that money just happens like that? No, it's given by benefactors, big and small, who have a surplus money that they got from their work or their investment. But even investment, we go back to the private sector. What do you invest in? Normally. So, and you see, my friends, it's, so it comes from you're poor because not enough money because no source of income, no source of income because no job, and where your job come from the private sector, then don't you think we should make it easy for entrepreneurs to start and run businesses? I think we should. And so many indexes, it turns out, measure how easy or hard it is to start a business anywhere in the world. And what they find, one after the other, the Doing Business Index of the World Bank, the Fraser Institute Economic Freedom Index, so on and so forth. So many of them. What they show in their numbers is what I live every day. It is harder to do business in almost anywhere in sub-Saharan Africa than it is to do business anywhere in Scandinavia. The reason why I pick Scandinavia is because anti-business people like Bernie Sanders, folks who are so suspicious of a business, they love to cite the Scandinavian nations as their model. And then I love to tease them by saying, do you know that all Scandinavian nations are more capitalist than almost any African nations? And they're like, huh? And I'm like, yeah. Do you believe it should be as easy for any African entrepreneurs to start a business than it is for any entrepreneur in Scandinavia? They say, yeah. Then I'm like, so then I rest my case. Let's level the playing field. All of this inequality talks that you want to talk about, I'm not interested in. There's one major inequality, there's one major freedom that no one has bothered to look at when it comes to why these nations are poor, is how much economic freedom do they have or not. And when we look there, we are realizing that African entrepreneurs in Africa are at a great disadvantage. And it manifests in all the ways that I talked to you about it. And there, at last, I had my answer. This is why we're poor. We are poor. Africa is the poorest region in the world because it is the region in the world that has the most regulations. It is the most overregulated region in the world. And oftentimes people don't think about it that way. They say, the other day I had a student, before you heard anything I said, he said, let me try to see how he said it. He said, Magatte, don't you think that, all of these lawless places, don't you think that we should, and I'm like, describe to me a lawless place. And of course, he picked up an African nation. And I'm like, okay. Because what it is, okay, if you make it so hard for the everyday entrepreneur to start and run a business, if you make it so hard for them, they don't run these businesses or they fail more than they should. Who is left? Who is the only game left in town? The multinationals and all the cronies. And you know what? Some of these companies, some people haven't been paid for 8 months. You would ask, why do you stay? Well, because hope keeps life going. I put 8 months in there. I'm going to be paid. And plus, where do you want me to go? There are other jobs. And that's what these people know. You want to quit? Good luck. Make sure that door doesn't hit you on your way out. There are a million people behind that door, which is true. Some people have been interning for 2 years, 3 years. Because have you looked around you everywhere, all wealthy nations, do you know who is the biggest part of the economic fabric? Small and medium-sized enterprises. We like to talk about the big companies, but the ones who make the community thrive the most, it's all of these pizza, places, the laundry place, the, little company that's making some paper products, hiring 10, 20, 50 people, another one hiring maybe 100 people, another one hiring 5 people. It's all of these companies. They're small, right? Smaller. But if you put chains around those guys and you cut their necks, what are you left with? The big guys. And the cronies, like I said. That's it. And then when you don't pay people for 8 months, when you go into some of these bathrooms, some of these companies, I've seen it with my own eyes. These companies in Africa where all the executive team is white, expatriates, because when white people come to our countries for jobs, they're called expatriates. Where we go to your country, we're called immigrants. Okay, whatever, but I digress. People see, I go into some maybe spaces where the top is all white and everybody else is black, and they have different bathrooms for the black staff. And you don't want to see the state of those bathrooms. And so people see this stuff, and of course, rightfully so. They are disgusted, they are bothered. But then they say, oh, it's because there's no law, anything goes. No, it's because you put so many laws that strangle only the little guy because they have an army of lawyers to go around things. And even if you don't have an army of lawyers, it makes sense for them at their size to maybe when I have to go do payroll every month, go physically, it might make sense for them to have just one person that they hire because maybe they have 1,000 employees or 10,000 employees. All of a sudden it's worth it because one person takes files for 10,000 people. It is way more productive than one person taking files for 10 people, right? It makes sense. So it's just the nature of things. And then people say, put more laws, we gotta block these people. All you did is put one more brick higher for me, little Magatte over here, trying to survive. And at some point you're gonna make it so high that I pack up my stuff and I leave. So I hope that this, I don't know how many of you knew about this, but it was important for me to come. If I had to take 10 flights to come here, I would have taken 10 flights. Because if I can change one person's mind, forget even about changing your mind, but if I can open one person's eyes to this other side of the story, it was worth it. Because people ask, how are we going to do, what are we going to do? What we're going to do is start with awareness. If we don't know what a problem is or what causes the problem, we're doomed to not fix it. Right now, the world is focused on telling me that Africa is poor because I'm dumb, because I don't have enough education, because I don't have enough food, because I need shoes. That's what the world believes. But I don't have access to clean water. That's what they believe the reason is to my state right now. And guess what? All of them are working on the solutions. All of these NGOs bringing us water. All of these NGOs bringing us food. Everybody's busy bringing us stuff. Tom Shoes said, I'm going to give you free shoes. Except, where we work, where we have a manufacturing in Senegal, it happens to be one of the shoe-making capitals of a country. 215 some small, medium-sized shoe-making businesses. Each of them hiring 15, 20 people, approximately. Do you know what happened to these people the day the truck full of your free Tom shoes shows up? Do you know what happens to them? They go broke. Because who can compete against free? And this whole model of buy one, give one works so well, I should say, for Tom Shoes. Some of my friends say, Tom Shoes, they're smart, man. They found a way to be paid for something that churches have done for a long time, which is giving free shoes to people. But the give one, buy one works so well, now wants to do it about everything. Now I get free tampons, I get free soaps, I get free t-shirts, everything. So, but when you do that, you're effectively killing the little economy we have on the ground. Thank you very much. I know it came from good intentions, but man. So that's why it's important for me to do this, because I believe in the power of the crowd. And of course, what are some of us doing solutions-wise? My book is coming up next year, and at the end, we have a suite of my blueprint, the blueprint that I propose for Africa to leapfrog. Because the time is no longer to catch up. It's too late for that. But the time is to leapfrog. And the goal, and what I see in my mind, and I know is possible, because we're working on it, is a prosperous Africa, where Africans are going to be recognized as global co-creators of the world. And I believe when that happens too, it's going to have direct ripple effect on this thing called racism. Oftentimes, I believe that racism, a big part of it, is due to the negative stereotypes attached to 90% of the representatives of the black race. Because you might not know it, but 90% of black people in this world live in Africa. And so if your vision of Africa is this land of poverty, disease, wars, whatever, subconsciously or not, it is just that. This man this morning said, we're poor because we're low IQ, we don't work, we're lazy, we don't have enough education. At least he's saying it up, openly. How many believe that deep down, or worse yet, behind? They don't even know that's what they think. But I believe the day people see that Africa, racism will be cut probably by 90%. China had to face a lot of that same, crap when it comes to how the world used to look at them when they were primarily poor. And today, like them or not, you've got to give them respect. China gets to decide which movies get made all the way in Hollywood. Richard Gere lost his career because of his relationship to the Dalai Lama, which the Chinese are very against. If you want to, and they get to decide also what type of story is told and under which lens. That, my friends, is the power of economic freedom. And until we African nations have it, we are going to remain the puppets of the world, as it is right now. So I am not interested in anything that's not going to produce prosperity. I do not come from people who beg. And whatever happened to us in the past, happened to us. I mean slavery, I mean colonialism. But 60 years later, I believe there are ways for us to get out of this mess. It is not easy, but it is totally possible. And what I'm talking about has shown itself to work time and time and time again. Hong Kong did these reforms that we are proposing to do. Singapore did it. Taiwan, all of these places that have gone from poor, so many of these Asian nations used to be poorer than most African nations. Look at them 60 years later. Singapore used to be a colony of Great Britain. Today, it is richer per GDP capita than colonizing nation Great Britain. Come on, just come on. So, and this is so important. This is why I defend the free market so much. This is why I defend the free enterprise so much. And in a way you can say, I defend capitalism, what capitalism normally is, not this definition you might have of it. I defend those because that's the only way we know to build prosperity. And my people, at last, deserve to have it. And so, for me, it is very much a matter of life and death, literally. The people I told you about, dying in planes, being sold as slaves, all of that would not be, I believe, not happen if we had enough jobs back home, that they can stay home and provide for their families. And when they decide to migrate, like I did when I came to the US, we do that from the front of the plane, thank you very much. And when I come, you have companies fighting to hire you. So when I explained this to my employees, when we first started, we finished building the factory and we started working, I explained this to I sat my staff down and I talked to them. I shared with them exactly what I shared with you. And it was powerful because for them, when they look at me, they can see themselves. I was them once upon a time. I would have been them today if my parents did not give me the opportunities they gave me and the rest of the world followed suit. And at some point, at the end of this girl, Yahara, she was 26 years old, she started crying. And I said, why are you crying? She said, because my God, I'm crying because I have a confession to make. And she said, my whole life, every time I watch a movie, when I look at magazines, all of that time, every time I see me, the African girl, the African person, and they're always showing us we're poor, and they're giving us money, they're sending us shoes and all that stuff. And she said, I'm sorry, but I just came to the acceptance, and that word was big. I just came to the acceptance that maybe us Africans are just inferior. My heart just shattered. Wow. And then she said, but that's not why I'm crying. I said, then why are you crying? She said, I'm crying because now I know that it is not true. And when she said that, you should have seen her body demeanor. The whole time I've known her, she was like this. She's never come. But when she said that, she grew taller, like straight like that, shoulders back, head up. I think I've never seen somebody as beautiful, because that's what beauty looks like. That's what dignity looks like. It is beautiful. So the free markets, the free enterprise, it's not just about making money. It's about human dignity. First, foremost, beginning, and wherever you want it. That's what it means to me. So I would encourage you people, and anybody you know, to not take any of this for granted. Because right now in the US, I am seeing some very, very dangerous forces at play. People who do not understand what it takes to accomplish what you've accomplished. We will leave the slavery part of the USA aside. But these forces are powerful. They work. Everywhere we've been tried, they work. People who were colonized can use it to thrive ahead of them. It's powerful. And most importantly, it makes people feel dignified. So yeah, I will defend it anytime. And I would encourage you to hang on to it. Can things be done better? You betcha, always. I'm on the board of Conscious Capitalism, which is the largest organization of purpose maximization companies. We believe that the goal of, for companies, it should be all about purpose maximization and not profit maximization. And the relationship between purpose and profit is, if I ask Cheryl, what do you want to do with your life? Cheryl is probably going to tell me about some very lofty goals, whether it's to raise the most happy, healthy, productive kids, or it is to, find a cure for cancer. Whatever it is, it's going to be something big, something really honorable. She's not going to tell me, Magatte, my goal is to build as many red blood cells as I can, except if she doesn't make them, she's not here to do the goal. That's all. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Magatte. Holy cow, I told everyone you'd be inspired. I certainly am inspired, and it's the best story I've heard about the reason why anyone became an entrepreneur. I mean, you actually just did it because you saw a problem and took care of the problem started to take care of it, took care of the problem. And I also think it's interesting you talked about your parents, and I think your parents drove that entrepreneurship into you by telling you look for solutions, not just problems. And so that says a lot about you, and thank you very much for not just for coming here, but for what you're doing as well. And so I have a question. You were just talking about aid, and so the first time I actually heard about you is seeing the movie Poverty Inc. Because if you haven't seen the movie Poverty Inc., you can Google it on the internet. The movie is available for free, and Magatte is featured very prominently in that movie. And so you talked about just some of the harm with Tom's shoes and some of the harm that can be caused by long-term aid. And I think most people come from a good-hearted intentions that they want to help people. And so what's a better way for it, instead of like donating to an aid organization, what's a better way to help people? I mean, I know the best thing would be let's have economic freedom, but how can we influence economic freedom or do something to help the problem?
Yes, thank you for your question. I think that for everybody who is in this room today, without even needing to agree with me, the only thing I would ask you as you walk out of these doors is to at least take this side of the story to the outside world. If you can do nothing else, you can do that. You can say, you know what? I'm not sure what to think of it. I'm not even sure I agree with it. But I've heard this other story. And then let people wrestle with, what it is that they think they know. That's definitely what happened for me. I used to be to the left of the left. I used to be borderline a communist, literally. You would be shocked today, right? But that's also what intellectual integrity does, and also intellectual humility. You have to be humble in the way you think, so that when you're faced with evidence, that you can gracefully accept the evidence. In my case, it was easier because I was also living it For the longest time I thought what I was living was an anecdote, when I realized, no, this is actually recorded, this is systemic, there's a way this is working. So I would always promote intellectual integrity as well as intellectual humility. But for me, so take this other side of the story outside. You guys can debate it. That's what I want. I want people to talk about this. And beyond that, I say very simply, buy Africans, buy African products made in Africa by Africans. When you're doing that, you can be assured that jobs are being sustained, created, strengthened back home. We just came up with new packaging and everything, and now I'm just going bold about this. I'm not going around beating around the bush or anything. Our new packaging and everything, you get to see it. Build prosperity in Africa, buy African products, checked. Made in Africa, checked. By Africans, checked. That's another easy way to do it. And we're going to be exposing people to what I call Cheetah Made, because my whole thing is Cheetah, the Cheetah world. I'm sure you've asked me why Cheetah. But we're creating the Cheetah Made verification badge. Just like when you have fair trade verification badge, I believe that I used to believe in fair trade, I no longer do. And since my first company, after having to deal with that whole thing, I realized that I don't believe in that. So we, again, criticize by creating, we're building our own badge that we feel is going to be more impactful if you want to have impact. And beyond that, if you want to go, there are many other ways to be involved, anywhere from working with us to create greater transparency. We're talking e-government, e-governance, because when you have more transparency thanks to technology, then it also takes down corruption, because when people get to see where everything goes, they're less tempted to, take. So those are things. And then my most radical project though, so I'm an entrepreneur. I'm also the director for the Africa Center for Prosperity of the Atlas Network, which is the largest organization in the world working on taking down barriers of entry for entrepreneurs. So in my capacity, I oversee many free market think tanks we invest in Africa. And these people's job, and they're all, it's basically local people coming up with their own local solutions. They come to us for support, that's it. We don't tell any country what they're supposed to do, how they're supposed to do it. You see this problem related to economic freedom, what are you doing about it? Let's finance you, let's help you get it there. And these people have been pushing for so many reforms, it's not even a joke, they're doing amazing work. But that is still all piecemeal legislation, which takes time, and by the time we got these wins over here, more laws get passed over there, muddying the water some more, so we're just like, and meanwhile, the demographic dividend in Africa is so big. Africa is one of the youngest continents in the world. In my country alone, 80% of the population is below the age of 35. I'll give you 1 second to wrestle with that. It's a good thing, but it can also be a dangerous thing, because if all of these young people, there's nothing more dangerous, they say, as a young man with no jobs, which means no hope for the future. If you want to watch trouble happen, I don't care if you're Jewish, if you're if you're Italian, if you're Senegalese, if you're Muslim, if you're Catholic, whatever it is that you might be, we know that across the world there's nothing more dangerous than a young man, especially, women seem to be less problematic, but a young man without a job, without hope for the future. And we have a lot of those young men. So it is important that we get working. So what we have decided to do, which is my most bold, crazy project right now, most radical, is we decided to basically looking and inspired by the model of Dubai. Before Dubai, you're thinking about Hong Kong and then Singapore, and even look no further, the Chinese SEZs, the Chinese miracle, pulling 800 million people out of poverty in the short amount of time that they did. This is nothing short but of a miracle. And they did it thanks to these SEZs, special economic zones, which are among the most free market zones in the world. And if you want to know more about this, read the book from Coates, Nobel Prize Coates, along with Nina Wong. They wrote this book called How China Became Capitalist, because even communist China had to become capitalist when they were tired and sick of being poor. And it worked for them as well. So, so what we did there is to think, now, what would happen if my country, for example, if you take a whole country and you ask them to do, to change these laws, which is what we're working on, reforms and everything. It's happening too slow for where the world is going. but we keep working at it and we're accelerating. But it's so hard for them to do it at a national level. So we're thinking, how about you take a little plot of land in a rather unoccupied part of your country, and there, with the admission and the recognition that the laws that rule the business life are rotten, bad, but they're so muddy that you can't even start to untangle it, we're going to start with a clean blank canvas. So now think about that piece of land as your computer, and think about the set of laws that are going to rule it when it comes to business as your operating software. And the magic happens. That's what Dubai did. And when Dubai realized that, they said, well, we don't have the best laws when it comes to business, so what we're going to do is that we're going to look around the world. We're not just going to copy one other country versus another. We're going to look at business around the world, and we're going to think about best practices and come up with a set of best practices. But they found that no matter what, it seems like this British common law rule was actually way better for business than they had. And so, and it is true. Most Francophone nations, for example, in Africa, they still copy French civil law. For those of you who know anything about law, there's nothing worse for business than civil law, right? And that's for various reasons. I could go into that if you guys want to, but not to bore you tonight. But anyway, so here we are thinking, so basically the magic then is to say, on this rather unoccupied plot of land, so no one can call us, expropriators or anything like that, we're going to go to a space where no one bothered to be, that's why it's unoccupied, and there we're going to start with a blank canvas when it comes to business laws. We're not talking about changing anything that makes a country sovereign, meaning its immigration laws, meaning its defense laws, or anything like that. We're just going to talk about business. We're just going to deal with the business part. And so there what you do is you come up with the best set of laws, best world-class set of laws when it comes to business. And so Dubai, in a way, when they realized that, they went and they hired retired British common law judges from England, brought them over to train their local judges, and to and they retrained the whole system up and down to educate the law and such. And this is how Dubai, there again, and we know when these things happen for real, when countries do it at a critical level, I mean, the magic happened within 25 years. We're talking within a generation. In less than a generation, you will see the change. This is pretty powerful. So that's how Dubai today, I think it was last year, entered the top 10 of international financial centers of the world. Dubai works so well that Abu Dhabi now is saying, hey, we've got to do better than them. And so this is really going. And so some of us have said, what if we could do this in somewhere in Africa? And when people think about what's going on the continent, you're looking at this huge continent where, I don't know if you realize it, but by 2050, every 4 people, 1 out of every 4 people walking this earth will be African. I don't know if you know that. The largest city in the world will be Lagos, Nigeria. I don't know if you know that. So we are saying, the good news here is I don't have to change all 54 countries in Africa, 55 depending on how you count, but all we need is one nation that has a leader that understands this and has the motivation, and then let's see if we can make it happen. So it turns out that a little over a year ago, we got one of those countries interested. We got to sign an MOU. I can't still disclose that because these things are highly sensitive, as you can imagine. And so right now we're pretty much involved in the process of designing the law, the business law for this place. And basically what you're doing is you're offering people a chance to try before they buy. Because you're going to be doing this in a place where no one really cares right now, so much that we're not living there. Now, but what people don't know is soon this zone is going to have its own law and governance that might not have anything to do with the host country. That's pretty rad. So we're working on that, knowing that if it goes through, entrepreneurs and investors will do what they always have done. They will show up, and prosperity will be built. And it will happen, and if it happens, the rest of the country is going to say, hey, we want to convert the whole country now. Without fights, without nothing. We just proved our case and let it happen. And when it happens in one place, guess what's going to happen? Because what us humans do. People try it everywhere else. And this is how I know that my continent will be changed in this lifetime of mine. When I tell my people, my friends, you watch, within this lifetime of ours, Dakar in Senegal will become capital culture of the world, fashion. I mean, Chanel is actually going to be doing one of their fashion shows in my country right now. You know, amazing people, beautiful people, all of that. So I'm telling them, Dakar is going to be the capital of the world in fashion and culture. And my own people laugh at me. I mean, they would like to believe it, but they don't see. But me, I know how this is going to happen. Some parts of Nigeria will become, I don't even want to call them Silicon Valley or whatever. It's going to be something of Africa, which is going to be among the best in the world when it comes to technology and such. So, all over. That's the world I live in. And I don't call it a dream, I call it a goal, because the plan is clear and it's viable and it's worked. It's time and time again, and place over it's shown to work. We know this stuff works. Two countries that start out in a very different place. Two countries that start out the same people. Take North Korea, South Korea. Take East Germany, West Germany. It was the same people to start with, right? Same culture, same everything. One decides to go various forms of statism route, and the other one decides to go a free market route. Guess what? Same thing with, So very similar countries who take different paths end up in very different situations. Reverse, very different countries. So look around the world. I mean, you look at a country like, like a place like UAE and places like, Australia, the US, all of that. Very different nations from each other. But what do they have in common? They run on the same software. I'm starting to think this software is pretty time-proof, place-proof, everything-proof. So you want to get there, you use the software. And the beauty of that software is it belongs to no one. I like to think that the free market is simply the way that humans behave. All of us are motivated by our incentives. All of us have our own goals. All of us, in our own way, there is what you want. The way you pick which grocery store you're going to go to, the way you pick which bread you're going to pick, each one of you has their own choice. The minute I try to stand between you and that choice, trouble happens. And I believe a free market is the one that offers the least friction between what it is that you want and what it is that you get.
So, yeah, I want to give everyone a chance to ask, or not everyone, I want to give some people a chance to ask a question in the audience as well, and that's a very hopeful message about the future of Africa. I'm really excited to hear that, and you think about all the untapped human potential, I mean, and it's going to mean prosperity for Africa and the world too. Yes, so are there questions from people in the audience at all?
What? You're closer. Sure. Well, thank you very much. Very, very inspiring. And what's the word I'm looking for? So I empathize with a lot of the information that you shared. I also grew up overseas, and I've experienced some of that. And I lived in the UAE for 12 years, and I had a company in that free zone that you're talking about. And I wanted to ask you, so what is it about those free zones that you found that can be applicable in, let's say, the continent of Africa? Because in the UAE, it's a unique situation where you have 200 nationalities or expatriates all operating in that area, and they all have a different understanding of what the laws are. And so it's easy to sort of create a neutral place for businesses, for entrepreneurs to interact. And I was thinking, have you thought of that challenge as you sort of, do that in your current situation? Thank you.
You're most welcome. No, but actually, you see that harmonization part that you're in a way describing is precisely what's needed in a way, right? For the rules to be clear and for everybody to be therefore able to understand them. And the best way to keep them clear is to keep them simple and not, simple and also not senseless. So the part that we're relying on is just having very universal rules around clear, transparent laws, the rule of law itself, and also knowing that what's going to be built there is not going to be taken away. So I guess we're deep down, we're tapping into the same need for almost. I know that some of my free market friends might kill me when they hear the word harmonization, but I think that's the best way to explain it. Some rules that everybody can understand. You don't have to be Senegalese to understand it or whatever. That's what needs to change. That's what needs to change. So that if you're from the UAE, you're like, oh, I understand what they're talking about there because that's exactly what, you know what I mean? So those type of process need to happen, which we don't have right now. Everybody has their own crap going on. If you came to my country, if you didn't know everything I told you about, you'd be like, what are they doing? So, anyway.
And how you doing? All right. I want to say thank you for coming up here. Hopefully you're able to stay warm. 2 questions. My first one is, have you ever heard of the Woody Lynch letters? No? Okay, I'll get a chance to check that out.
Woody Lynch?
Woody Lynch letters.
Woody Lynch.
Yeah. The second part is, as you see here, you have a good crowd, but we're lacking some of us in here. And I tend to see that in certain parts of the world and some of the places in this country where we have speakers like yourself, I wouldn't say it falls upon deaf ears, but ears that are not here to actually listen to it. What are some things we can do to amplify that opportunity, get some more of, when I say us, you know what I mean, bro, some of us to be able to have opportunities to listen to this, because I think we're lacking the access to know when someone like yourself is coming to a place like North Dakota or Minnesota. How can we bring that more about? Thank you.
Thank you so much, and that's a really good question. You know, when I first came to, and I think oftentimes I have come to realize, and correct me if I'm wrong, and you can change my mind because I told you I love to practice intellectual humility and integrity. But when I first came to this country, is when I realized that it seems like there are black people who come from Africa, and then there are black people in America. And I felt like, this is when I came here, that's the first time I kind of felt some type of differentiation between black people. And I feel like black people in America, for some reason, and then it became weird to me, why are they calling themselves African Americans if in a way it's almost like I don't exist for them? And so, I don't know, I feel like maybe everybody has their own, maybe, you know, there are problems everywhere, everybody has their own problems, but I feel like the minute people who look like us, no matter where they come from, understand that we're battling the same problems, I think when they come together. And so in this case, I feel like maybe it's not clear yet for both sides, but in a way the fight remains the same. But wherever we have discussed it, I can tell you that I have way more African American friends now than I had when, you know, before I understood any of this stuff, and I think bridges are being built. So to go back to your question, I think it's just going to be one of these things that you and me, as we go back, you know, to our friends, to our families, to the communities in which we are, to kind of make the world travel back and forth. It is one of my dreams, literally, to take as many African Americans as I can back home to Africa, you know, and build the motherland back together. But for that to happen, we have to find a way to reunite the black family. That's how I call it. We have been separated along very artificial and cruel lines, and but I also think that we have to practice, you know, the love, curiosity, empathy, and compassion towards each other, you know, to get back to each other. And personally, in my own life, I've been doing that, spending way more time with African Americans, trying to understand their vision of the world and what's been happening. I remember being sometimes quite judgmental about, come on guys, let's just, you know, pull ourselves up by the bootstrap, you know, things like that. But then I remember when I had to be, you know, explained by some of my African American friends, but my God, you don't understand, you know, what was going on during slavery. They were selling, and it's not that I didn't understand, it's like sometimes you don't remember those, but it's true. It might be a very different story when a family, you know, mom is sold off over there, dad over there. I mean, that level of, but I just think we have to, we just got to come back to each other, and in the end we realize our stories are not that different, and also what's going to get us out of it is also not that different. And I think once we understand that, that's when we see more people showing up. So maybe the job is also on me. Maybe when I send my descriptions of my talk, to make it, to explain it a bit better, so that maybe people who look like you and I, regardless of where they come from, they're like, oh, there's going to be something in it for me there. This is not just about Africa. They're there to do their thing, and me, I'm here, I'm doing my thing. I think that needs to change. And but I'm willing to take it upon myself to be like, what can I do better so that people get it?
I would say that, I hope it's loud enough, but I would say to follow up what you're saying, there's, I think within us, there's an inherent distrust within our own people, within each other, whereas African Americans within our own culture, or even just Black people in general. Whereas I even have to check myself, whereas I realized at a certain point when I was in 23 other countries around this world, I've gave more grace to non-Black people than my own. And I think that's one thing that we have to start working on. 'Cause I did read the description before I got here, so I think it's totally fine.
Thank you. But we gotta get more people. Thank you.
Yep.
One last question we have time for, I think.
So,
Is
one
it-
of
we
your,
have a mic. I'm sorry.
oh, okay, yeah, sure.
So one of your key points were that you were able to do so much because of your entrepreneurship. So what were some mistakes throughout your entire career that you were happy you made because of the lessons you learned? But also at the same time, what were some mistakes that you made that you regret? Because I think that's the best way to learn. You learn from your mistakes. So obviously throughout life and in general, we make mistakes that we're glad we made. So what were some mistakes that you were glad you made, but also some mistakes that you wish you could change in terms of entrepreneurship and your career as well?
Oh.
It's a deep question, so take some time.
It is. I feel like the more I go in life, the older a mistake is, and the more I'm happy I made it. The younger the mistake is, and I guess I'm still reacting to it. What I'm trying to say here is, in the end, at some point, I got to understand what they mean by success is just a series of errors at the end of the day, right? So, but a mistake never feels like that. Never feels like a lesson the first time. You know, when it happened, when it's so raw, it doesn't feel like a lesson. So that's why I say my old mistakes, lessons. I'm proud I've made them. I'll give you an example. So the biggest mistakes that I made, the first one in business, had to do with not really understanding what a board means, and also, you know, who you partner with. In my case, I'm just going to be very blunt. When I started my first company, I decided to partner with husband and wife, something that I would never recommend anybody to do. My own husband had told me, because I wanted us to be partners. He's like, you know, I love you as my wife, and I want to keep it that way. So no, I cannot be your partner. So he was smart; he didn't do that mistake with me. But I made that mistake still by partnering with husband and wife. So that was not a good thing, not a good thing. But worse yet, I formed a board made of 3 people, me and the 2 of them. Number 3, at first it was supposed to be 60% of the shares were mine, and they were going to share 40% between the 2 of them. And at some point, my guy is like, "Oh, guys, I feel like we're all working the same hard, blah blah blah. So why don't we just cut it in 3 shares?" And then they say, "Oh, but you keep 10% extra." So then now I'm down to 40% for me, 30 each of them, but together it's 60. So you can only understand when trouble started to happen. Basically, I almost lost my company. Basically, and it took us a bitter proxy fight. A proxy fight within a corporation is the fight you do not want to lead. It's one of the nastiest fights. Basically, you're at the point where the board, there is an issue, we need to change for management in this, and on top of that, fourth, I made Greg, remember the guy I told you was the head of Odwalla? I made him CEO of a company, and I made myself president, not understanding that those titles had meaning. I was like, come on, he's older than me, he's done it before, whatever. Fine. He was insisting on that. Well, now I understand why. But anyway, so when it came to time, we had a big argument about something very meaningful. And it turned out that he no longer should be the CEO of the company. And at that point, that's when you learn the hard way that the board is the only unit, the only thing that has the power to remove or change a CEO. The board is it, that's it. So now we're asking them to fire themselves, because if the board is the majority, we're asking them to take themselves out of the equation. That's not gonna happen if they don't want it. So when that happens, your next recourse is the investors. That's what we call a proxy fight. So the investors now have to vote on so basically what happens is I come in, they come in, and we're proposing the investors a new slate of board of directors as well as what they're going to do once they're in. And in this case, we would let this person go, bring another CEO. So you're pretty much going on an electoral campaign to get their vote. And if you get the majority, then your slate gets to pass. Then you fire all the board of directors, in this case, all of us free. And in this case, I was going to reinstate myself along with some other board people. So it's almost like when you're saying, hey, I am, I don't know, in this case, I'm Joe Biden, and I'm running, and Kamala Harris is going to be my running mate. Do you want to vote for us? Oh, and if you elect us, this is all the things we're going to do, these are people we're going to put in place, whatever. And then, the country chooses. That's what we had to do. I won it, I like to say, by the skin of my teeth. It was a win, but it was a terrible. For me, this is when the company actually stopped existing. And during that fight is also when I was now an entrenched executive in my own company. Because he was a CEO, but they were fighting with me, what happened here is the company was paying for his legal fees, because he's a CEO, and I have to pay for my own legal fees. I, at some point, was not even allowed to go into my own company anymore. And the employees were helping me from behind the scene. I mean, one anecdote is like some of them were going into the trash to look at their papers when they were writing their strategy, when they were talking to the lawyer, whatever. And that's how I would know what they were going to do the next time. Because they were writing notes from the strategy meetings they were having, and my employees were doing that for me. And eventually I won because also somebody delivered to me a brown envelope. All of this in my book. At night. I still don't know who did that. But that brown envelope with the information it had in it saved us. Saved me. So anyway, that was a big one. That was a big one. And then, I had to learn the hard way that at the end of the day, you don't fight the market. Market is only ready, market fit only happens when the market is ready for what you have to offer. And you cannot be 10 steps away from the market and expect the market to go with you. What I mean by that is my second company, I think we went too fast in terms of where we wanted them to be, in terms of, and in this case it was about how they should view Africa. They simply were not, the world was not ready for that. Now they are, and that's why we're doing what we're doing today. So I think those are some of the mistakes that I made. And in my case also, oftentimes, because I felt betrayed the first time, then it became hard for me to trust again. And as I built my next two companies, I was basically making the mistake of not leaning on people and at the end of the day doing too much for my own good. So that was not good. So I went from trusting too much to trusting no one. And I had to learn to come back to the middle. And I had to learn to not, and also going from, so I will leave it to that because there's tons. But now I'm at the place where when a mistake happens, of course when it's not so biting that you're just like, hating yourself for it, I actually like to reflect back on my mistakes oftentimes. And I do that with my husband a lot because my husband is my everything. He's like my coach. He's like my poor guy. But yeah. So I'm not sure if it helps, but never take board of directors. When you guys build companies, whether it's a company or a nonprofit, be very serious when you have to create your board, because the board has all the power. And when you go in business with somebody, do think about almost as a prenup. What would happen if this doesn't work? If I had thought about that as I started my partnership with my business partners, I would have done what I do now, which is put it even in the laws of a company that if we don't agree on something and it is so bad that somebody needs to be, we're gonna have to go through a mediator. That is part of what we signed for all the time. Because when you go to a mediator, you're talking to someone who is trying to make a win-win and not a lawyer who wants to keep you in the fight for as long as they can because that's how they make their money. So I try to be very intentional now about those things. It's not fun when you get in business with someone to be thinking about the day you might have to separate from them, but I think that's one of the best things that I learned, and it gives me peace of mind, and it also allows me to trust a little bit more to come back to that middle, for whatever it is worth.
Well, thank you. And thanks everyone for coming. Thanks for sticking around a little bit longer. I get to go to dinner with her, but you don't, so come up and ask questions if you'd like. So thanks again. Thanks, Magatte.